Okay. So we're back at Cracks in Postmodernity with our token parents, Amelia Chorney and Joe Abnett. When I say token, it's because most of our followers, readers, contributors are either volcels, incels, or just straight up deviants. You two are the only upstanding, married parents. So we thought we'd take advantage of your presence within the Cracks and Pomo world and get you to talk about life as parents. So guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, I mean, Joe's been on the podcast, was it twice at this point, I believe?
Yep.
And both Amelia and Joe have written great pieces for us. In particular, Amelia wrote about trad wives. Joe wrote about the manosphere. Those are among my favorite pieces. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the topic of parenting and marriage as well. And some of you submitted some really great questions. Some of you submitted some not so great ones, but we'll try to answer them as well. So this is what we'll start with. Somebody asked, were you prepared for how drastically your life was going to change when you had kids, and how did you accept the life change? Who's going to start?
I can start as the token one with the uterus.
Excellent. Representation.
No, I was not prepared. I don't think you can be prepared. Um, yeah, no, I was not prepared. I think I knew the extent to which, like, intellectually speaking, like, I knew what sacrifice was. I knew what, um, I think I knew what self-gift in terms of love really was. But in terms of it becoming incarnate in my body, hormonally, physically, uh, as I am someone with a uterus, no, I was like not prepared. Um, I would say like first step physically, and then lifestyle wise, I think intellectually I was prepared. I have had great formation from my own parents, and then also I think in my like simultaneous career formation, personal formation. Um, I think my lifestyle isn't drastically different to when I was single to being married, but in terms of the extent to which, yeah, you have to die to yourself, even more, like definitely not. Interested to hear Joe's thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree with Amelia for the most part. I mean, you can be told what it's going to be like. You can be told all the things that are going to happen so many times, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, I got this. And then it happens, and you're like, wow, this is more and less than I thought. So what I mean is, your kid is totally dependent on you in
Mm.
ways that you can't even imagine. Like for a long time, and as they get older, they're still totally dependent on you, just in new
Mhm.
ways. Something I wasn't prepared for example, was how for the first like 4 or 5 months, your kid does nothing. They sleep and they eat and they need
Mhm.
to be bathed and changed, but like they don't talk to you, they don't roll over, they don't even really play very much except for very rudimentary stuff, and you're just staring at them like, come on, do something. And it's but at the same time, they overwhelm you with how interesting they are, how funny they are, how much you love them is kind of frightening, and they have a power over you that you don't really expect. Um, I think I remember I said something really stupid before we had kids to my wife. I was like I always want to put you first. I want to love you more than our kids. And I was like, that was so wrong. That was so backward. Like, because the reality is that now, if our house was on fire and I had to run in and save somebody, I would
Mhm.
save the kids before I'd save my wife. Because if I saved my wife, she would say, "What the hell are you doing?" And
Yeah,
she would
yeah,
run back into
totally
the
fair.
save them.
Totally fair. Yeah.
But so yeah. So in summary, I agree. You can think you're prepared, but you never quite are. It's always different from what you
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah. And I would say that's a good sign of a parent who is open to mystery. Um,
Hmm.
like I think I'm reading because I'm part of this mom book club. Maybe some of you are part of it. I have many thoughts on this mom book club, but overall, it's been a great experience for me to be open to mystery. But we're reading Pinocchio this month. And the first chapter of Pinocchio is all like talking about Master Cherry, who is like this foil for this like rationalistic man who's like closed off to like surprise, and to imagination with like what to do with this talking piece of wood, basically. And when I read that, the first thing I thought of was like, oh wow, like yeah, I'm like totally honestly not prepared for every single week, in the maybe the most imaginative sense, but it's a far better place to be, I think, than to be rationalistic and to be totally closed off to even desiring to be a parent because you can't control anything. Like I was joking with Stephen and Joe like before we started recording this podcast that I'm like taking this call from the call room at the hospital that my husband is working at because our childcare situation this week has been so complicated that I can't take this call from my regular office because my office is too far away because I won't be back in time to relieve the nanny. And I didn't forgot my AirPods because I forgot my daughter's lunch. And instead of getting my AirPods, I got my daughter's lunch. Anyways, so just yeah, I was like not prepared for this week, but it's been fun. So I think it's way more fun um to be open to mystery and to be surprised by, yeah, like Joe kind of said, the extent to which you love this child, like beyond anything you could have like I feel like I've never experienced and I will never experience a feeling like that resembles that to like the love of my children. It's just like it hits you such in a different way. Even beyond, I mean, this is a hot take, more than my husband. Maybe that's
Well,
oh
it's
yeah.
interesting that you're saying that because within the Catholic Church, the doctrine on marriage and procreation has developed to like it used to be like in this very Thomistic, legalistic sense that, you know, marriage, sex is ordered towards union and procreation in a very just like in a way that didn't recognize them as intertwined with each other. And as the doctrines have developed over the years, especially into Francis's papacy, like there's more of a Trinitarian sense of the child as a sign of the unity of the spouses. So it's not like there's the spouse and then there's children, that's the fruit of their union, but it's all interconnected the same way the Trinity is. So just a little note for the Spurgs out there. But the next question is from me. Because I know a lot of people who say, you know, better to pursue my career first, have a stable job, so that then once I figure out my vocation, if I'm called to marriage and have kids, then I can support them and, you know, give them a stable, comfortable life. But I find that a lot of these people like end up waiting too long and then they have a hard time finding someone to get married or like the biological clock times out. So what do you think? I mean, better to pursue vocation first, even if that means you don't have like, you know, lots of money to give your kids a stable life, or the reverse, better to like stabilize and then get married, have your kids.
I'll start this one. Um, Vocation first, every single time. And the reason for that is, as if you're Catholic, you have to trust God to make things happen. And you have to be open to the possibility of these things happening. You can't say, God, I'm going to put you on hold and I'm going to figure things out for myself and then I'll let you step in. My frame of reference on this is a little different because, my parents don't really have careers. They have jobs. They've always, when I was born, my dad worked at a shoe store and my mom was a pharmacy technician. And they've always just kind of had jobs my whole life and not careers. And when they got married, they didn't have any money and they didn't care. It never entered into their mind that they had to make money before they had kids. And so they had six children and we lived in a 1,200 square foot house with one bathroom. And it was just like, it never occurred to me that it was necessary to have a bunch of nice things before having a family. And so, uh, in my opinion, in my experience, you figure it out. Since having kids, we've figured a lot of things out that we didn't know before or that we would have thought were impossible. I find that children give you this motivation and this impetus to get your shit together. Sorry, to get yourself together so that you can provide for them and care for them and give them what they need. And if you don't have that motivation and that drive, it can be easy to settle into something that is not quite what you want, and that's how you get into the trap of being like, oh, once I do this, once I do that, and you keep moving the goalpost, and before you know it, it's gone a little too far. Think about the opening scene of the movie Idiocracy, right? Where you have the couple who are both, they're doctors and lawyers or something, and they're like, oh, not in this economy. Not yet. Once we save up for their full college tuition, then we'll do it. And then at the end of the scene, the husband is dead, and the wife is like, well, maybe I'll find a new husband. And they never ended up. And meanwhile, Cletus and Bertha have like 14 kids, and their family trees branched off. Great movie. But I'll turn it over to Amelia.
Yeah, again, as the one with the uterus, please don't wait. It is just, oh man, I watched this. It was not okay. One of my Lenten goals, and just goals for life, is not like trying to like implicitly or explicitly like trash talk anything with another woman. But I listened to this like panel. It was like, women leaders in business from this like big journalism newspaper that puts on these like business conferences things. And it had this like CEO of Skims. Skims is a very successful like woman's. I don't need to explain Skims. If you don't know what Skims is, like I'm really sorry, but it's like an offshoot from the Kardashian family like mogul empire. They basically do like really cool underwear stuff, and they apparently have really great nursing bras. So if you are currently nursing and you want to feel like Kim K, she
Hmm.
probably doesn't nurse her own children, I'll be honest, but you can still get a Skims bra. Okay, anyways, I was listening to this like conference thing, and the CEO woman, like admitted that all these egg freezing initiatives, like some of these corporations, Fortune 500 companies will like, as part of their benefits package, if you're a female employee, will pay for you to freeze your eggs. And she publicly said in this like prestigious panel that like that probably was a mistake because then lo and behold, like it doesn't work sometimes. Like, and then you're like in your mid late 30s, 40s, and you haven't even started to imagine or to put the time and effort to like arrange your life to like find a partner. Um, and that was just like to me like a very like postmodern, but also a crack and postmodern example that this woman
Mm.
who like acknowledged like, hey, in my leadership, like, and she has her own children, like she has three of her own children, so she obviously made different decisions, whether or not that's by like circumstance that she just happened to meet someone or like intentionally or unintentionally. But I just thought it was a beautiful like moment, albeit like maybe a little too late to be like, actually, like we should have encouraged our like young rising women to like be like, it's okay to actually try to start a family. I think like women have these desires like naturally, just because, yeah, some TOB stuff like our gift of receptivity to nurture life. And I think I would say like there's two things I would caution and then encourage. Like one, I would caution against like not like prioritizing the voice of the Lord to like serve in any capacity outside of the home. Like please caution any voices that tell you to not try to invest in that. Like yes, of course, like vocation first. I totally agree with Joe, but like I think there's this extreme backlash that does come from this fear that's been sowed in like the cultural postmodern world that like yeah, like you have a limited amount of eggs. They're all going to disappear. Like you need to do that now. And any kind of other pursuits to like respond to the Lord's will with your gifts is like totally anti-conducive to that. Like I would say not just like not conducive, but like it's actually like a barrier, which no is not true. It's just really difficult. Um, so yes, totally like yes to vocation. And then obviously the other extreme that I already mentioned is like I'm gonna like lose my potential to use my gifts as a woman if I do pursue a family. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that all makes
Yeah.
sense. Yes to vocation, but don't ignore the voice of the Lord in your own life. Like it's following that regardless of whether it's like outside the home or in your career or in pursuing your vocation. Like it's all integrated, so you can't really go
Yeah.
wrong.
So rather than being like an abstract ideal, you're saying the point of reference is the call
Reality.
of
Yeah.
God. Yeah, which you discern in your experience. So that being said, for people who, are looking, they're on the market, Best tips for dating or overall dating philosophies one person asks for. What do you say?
Before I answer, because I'm gonna be very short, so Joe can do this because I just need to put a disclaimer out there. I am unfortunately one of those like unicorn people who like they married their first kiss and their first
Oh,
boyfriend and their first
wow.
date. Like guys, like
Species.
and this probably will tell you so much about me, but I was very much convinced I was going to become a late consecrated person until the first day of my freshman year of college, where I was put on the same. Okay, I went to a massive state school of like 30,000 people. I studied engineering. The engineering school is huge. It's like a couple thousand people. And there's this one introduction course that we all have to take. And there's like 10 sections of this course every semester. So there's a lot of people. But I was put in the same section of this introductory level course on the same group project with my future spouse for an entire semester. And so I met Chris like the first day of my freshman year, and that pretty much was game over. So I'm not going to answer this question besides like to the ladies, which is like, ladies, like there are a lot of things that can be red flags, but there are a lot of things that are not red flags. So please, like, don't be abstract about men. Like, unless it's immoral, like I think there's a very high bar to not pursue dating with a person. There's a difference between the dating and relationships. So this is just mostly to the ladies because I know sometimes women can be really, really harsh on men because of actual legitimate experiences where they've been hurt. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are red flags, but I think there's a lot of things that are not red flags that are just like men are weird and like that's normal. Okay, so Joe can do most of the talking.
So, unfortunately for everybody, I am also a unicorn, so to speak. I have dated and held hands with and kissed exactly one woman in my entire life, and so I'm not a great person to ask for practical dating advice from an experiential perspective. But I do know a lot of other guys, and I have watched a lot of people date. Being 34, I'm a part of the a generation that has sort of lost on the dating game quite a bit. I'm often amazed that a lot of the people who are my age have never had a serious relationship or they're still single. And I know kids who are 10 years younger who are on their third kid who are happily married, and that seems to be more normal for Gen Z. So if I have a piece of advice based on what I have seen and people I've talked to, it would be for men to not to lower their standards, so to speak, but to have far less criteria when they're searching for a partner. Because I think men they they put the possibility of a relationship into this box, and they're like, I need someone who likes all of these things and does all these things, and she's got to be into this stuff, and we've got to have this in common. And this is something that I might get my wife might make fun of me if I say this, but you really don't have to have that much in common with your spouse. Like you don't need to have all the same hobbies and listen to all the same music, and she doesn't have to be just as into the church as you, and you don't have to be just as into it as her. Like you should open yourself up to the possibility of dating a woman somewhere, and um, not to sound like a one of those pickup artist people, but it's kind of a numbers game, right? Like there's 5 billion women in the world. Chances are you can go on a few dates, and they don't all have to work out. As kind of a dweeby, nerdy guy, I know that a lot of people like me, they invest all of their emotion and all of their hopes into like one date. And if it doesn't go the way they plan, they give up and they're like, "Oh, it was a disaster. I'm bound to be single." I was just one of my friends who in one of our group chats just did this a few days ago. He asked this girl out after they like flirted at work for a couple weeks, and she said she was in a long-term relationship. And he said, "I think it's time I just got used to the idea of never having a family." I was like, "Give me a break, dude. Come on." Like you asked one girl out, she said no. So I
Mm,
would say to a lot of guys, just go where women are and talk to them and go on a date. Ask a girl out. And if she says no, whatever. It's okay. Move on. You have to believe that dating is not you can't fall for the lie. There's a lot of lies about dating and relationships. Some of them are, you know, that dating doesn't have to be a big deal, that casual sex is fine and it won't hurt you. Those are lies, but it's also a lie that you have a soulmate somewhere who is going to be
mm.
just like you and everything will be
100%.
perfect.
But
Like,
the idea that you're going to be friends, like marriage, I mean, it's nice when you like, the relationship matures, you have a friendship, but like the point is not to be pals. Like you have a shared mission,
Mhm.
not, but also I mean, just at the risk of getting canceled, like that whole idea that you're supposed to be best friends and with all these things that come ignores the fact that there's a difference between the genders, that we're not the same, that like
Mhm.
our way of perceiving and operating in reality is different. So no,
Mhm.
like you're not gonna get along all the time and like be pals. You're not supposed to.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Um,
St. John Chrysostom gave this homily way, whenever he lived, and famously he has the two spouses look at each other and he says, "Behold your cross." Now, while
yeah.
that might seem a little bit grim, but that's anyone who's been married for a long time can tell you that that's what the reality is. That
Mhm.
marriage is difficult and it requires both that you sacrifice, but also that you endure difficult times together. There are going to be times where you don't like each other very much, where you make each other mad, where differences in your personalities become an issue, and you work together to fix them. And sometimes when you don't like each other, you work together anyway, and that's when your relationship reaches new places and new levels of beauty that you never anticipated because you're able to see them without your fake uh, concept of them in your mind. You're able to look past that and see them as they are, and you learn to love them in new ways, even though it's based on something that you might not like about them to start. And so marriage is tough. Don't look for someone who's going to make it easy. Look for someone who's willing to do it with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Go ahead, yeah.
I was gonna say, I think it's so easy to fall in love with a lot of people. Like, I really think because I met Chris when I was like 17. Like, if I had just been like, yeah, we're gonna stay friends, like, I'm sure, like, down the line would have met somebody else great. And like could have easily, I say this like in the purely like abstract sense, like marry the other person. And so, yeah, I feel like what Joe touched on is like, yeah, just like your commitment to the particularity, which is kind of st what you mentioned, Stephen, to that particular like circumstance or that particular person. And like the call to marriage is not like an abstract thing. It's to a particular person with particular crosses, that has a particular like story. And yeah, I think that the idealism that comes from, yes, seeing marriage as this like, yeah, pie in the sky thing versus like, no, I'm actually only called right now, or like, I don't know if Chris dies young or something, which is very dark, but I've thought about it. Like, as of right now, like I'm called to marry, like, and to be in marriage with Chris. And so like all the other stuff that's not related to being married to Chris, that's about marriage, like is not really my business. Um, and I think that's given, hopefully, and I think the same approach could be taken to dating and just very much like sacrament of the present moment, which is a very Catholic thing. But I think it frees up a lot of the anxiety around like the future or the state in life, like I don't know, in general, questions.
Yeah. Also, just another spurgy note. In the Byzantine marriage liturgy, the husband and wife are wearing crowns, which symbolize the crowns of the martyrs. So, like,
Mm.
you're dying to each other. And sometimes you want to kill each other, but the whole point is that you don't because you die for them. Anyway, all right, so we have some more practical questions. Our friend Melissa has a question about iPads that it's been on my mind very much. Because I see when I'm around not iPad babies, I see the difference. So here's the question. Should I let my 7-year-old boy play with the 10-year-old neighbor boy? It was fine when they were younger, but now the neighbor boy is always on his iPad. Being raised by a single mom who seems very loving, but after the kids go to bed parties, smokes weed, and drinks heavily late into the night. Oh my God, wild parents. Outside with friends. When the boys play, they stay outside, don't go in each other's houses, but are often out of sight and earshot. I'm concerned about my son being exposed via iPad or just interaction to things outside our family's values. Am I being judgy or controlling or protective and responsible? So let's start with the question about like limiting your kids' interactions with people who you might be concerned about, the influence they're going to have. And then I guess let's go into like the iPads themselves. So what do we say about who we let our kids hang out with.
Um,
So when I was a kid, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
oh no, no, no. Go ahead.
Oh, so I'm so my approach to this has been influenced by my own childhood. We lived in a neighborhood full of kids who had to wear ankle monitors because they'd been arrested, and
Oh,
and there were a lot of broken homes and stuff, and I guess my parents didn't really tell us to stay away from anybody. I think the only time we stayed away from a kid was because he was like brandishing knives and stuff, and so they were like you should be careful, you should stay back. So I guess when it comes to my kids, I'm happy to have them playing outside with other kids anytime, and that's never really been. Anytime they're doing that, I'm typically happy about it. We have a couple of neighbor kids on the block. There's one family who, as far as I'm pretty sure they are explicitly like atheists,
hmm.
and they play with their kids, and their kids are kind of confused about our kids going to church and stuff like that. But they're nice kids and they play, and I find that it makes way for interesting conversations going forward, and it hasn't really been a problem yet. There's another family where their kids are very rough. Um, they have lots of animals in their house. I get the sense that they've got issues of their own, but they play together nicely, and what they have an 8-year-old son who he plays really nicely with our little girls and pushes them on the swings and stuff. So it's like at the end of the day, I'm happy to let them play with anybody until there is an actual problem. And when there is, the I think the solution is not to hide them away, but to talk about it. Because when it comes to raising children, your job is not to hide them from the world. It is to teach them how to live in the world. And all through their lives, they're going to meet all kinds of strange people and encounter all kinds of strange ideas. And the worst thing you can do for them in that regard is to not prepare them and to not provide for the possibility that you might have to have an uncomfortable conversation here and there. So, in general, I would say to Melissa, um, maybe talk to your kid about it, but don't worry so much. And if it and when it comes to the being, looking at stuff on an iPad without supervision, that can be scary for sure. And your kid needs to know that there might be things that he sees on the internet or elsewhere that he needs to talk to you about. But I would not use that as a reason to close off his friendship with that kid unless there's a really good reason to do so.
Yeah, I would say similarly. There was a point in time where we lived in a neighborhood for around 2 years, when Ellie, my daughter, was pretty young. She was like between 10 months to 2 years. And she went to a daycare where, I mean, some of the parents, I think, were in various like states of stability, economically, mentally, socially. Um, and I think the question of like, yeah, just like how intimate were we going to be as like friends of her friends came up. So I empathize a lot with Melissa. But that being said, like our kind of Chris and I's like philosophy when it came to that's like our neighborhood, 2 years ago and Ellie going to this daycare, um, pretty much like came from a place of more so our concern with like exposure to like mindless technology than like actual human problems because it's just so much more easier to for a child and for you to teach into and to empathize or to draw very clear boundaries for like somebody else's values and your values when it is just like not on a screen. I don't know if this makes sense, but like if you go to somebody's house and they're like the kids are like fighting, it's just really easy for a kid to tell your kid like that we're not going to fight. But it's a lot harder when it comes to like whatever they can see behind a screen that at this point in time is like kind of absurd how unregulated like children's access to technology is. And so I would say like unless there's been clear harm that this has like affected your child, um, to just being able, like Joe said, to like navigate those conversations about what they see and what they notice. And then yeah, just to remind them of like what you all value in your own family. But if it seems like your child is benefiting from the friendship and is enjoying it, And you haven't noticed like a change in their behavior or their character, or they're not telling you like, hey, I saw this weird thing. Like, um, yeah, to continue that. We love like having friends of all different types of backgrounds and beliefs and things. Again, like I would say, like I don't know if this is too explicit, but like yeah, to me the iPad is more of a concern than maybe some other deviant behaviors, especially if like the child's not necessarily seeing the other deviant behaviors and you're just kind of aware that they're in the background. Um, yeah. I don't know. It all just comes to like talking to your child, and then yeah, I would say like another thing too for peace of mind, because like I feel like every mom's an anxious mom, but like it's like constant discernment. Like what you do today with your kid, you can change the next day or you can change the week after, and it's not this like end all be all on a decision you make with your child.
So let's get into the iPads then, because like I was saying, like when I'm around Amelia's kids, I can immediately tell they're not iPad kids because they are not zombies and they're actually happy to be alive. Um, but I know you let them get some screen time here and
Mhm.
there. So let's talk about the limits and yeah, I mean, how do you go about deciding
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
much screen time, how much, especially not just iPads more than TVs, but you know, et cetera. How do you decide that kind of stuff?
Before you answer, Amelia, how old are your kids and how many do you
My
have?
kids are really little, and that was also going to be
Okay.
something I mentioned to Melissa is like my when your kids are really little, they have a heart. They don't have like a framework for the world. You're their framework, and so if they see something that's really problematic, it can be very disorienting for them, or they can just be really innocent. It'll fly over their heads. Um, so yeah, my kids are Ellie is now 3.5, and Joseph or Jojo is 14 months. So. In our family, because Ellie, yeah, hears her friends at school talk a lot about what they watch on TV. Um, we do like family movie night. So we started now, like, we'll like purposely, if we, because I love culture, I love watching TV. Like, I love that. Like, we watch the World Cup together. We'll watch sports tournaments. Like, we watched the Super Bowl halftime show with her. Like, it was like, I don't know, it's important to me. But so the way we've kind of discerned, like, oh, she feels this external pressure and has this desire. And also like, yeah, like I don't think there's anything wrong with watching creative things. At least with Ellie. Like with Jojo, we don't. He's just way too small. And it's just not good for his brain at this point in time. But we'll do like family movie nights where we'll actually pick a movie, sit there and watch it with her, and like we'll have a conversation about it. And it'll be like a family event and not just like a placeholder to pacify her or to give us a break or to like help her be more compliant. I think it's like there's a difference between like using an iPad for like genuine leisure or technology for genuine leisure and then using it as like um just something to like pacify your kid. And I know there's like so much pressure for children to be presentable and compliant in society. Like we see this all the time at restaurants in New York City. Like people will like put their kids on technology and I do deeply empathize with this. They want to have like a meal in silence. But I think a lot of it comes from this pressure of judgment of like, oh, you can't control your kid and the only way you can eat out with them is if they're watching something. Um, versus like, yeah, like it's your kid can watch interesting TV or TV that's purposeful, because it's for the sake of like leisure. So Joe, I know your kids are older though, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think initially I had all these fantasies about having zero technology, zero TV, zero screens. And it part of the problem with my fantasy was that was the temperaments of my children. So my oldest is 9, and he from a very young age was just obsessed with learning, and it was and you know everybody brags about their kids, but I think my to my son it's to the extent of almost being on the spectrum. In fact, he probably is, and he just I could not give him books fast enough. I could not teach him things fast enough, and he was constantly asking me to look things up on the internet for him. And so it got to a point where he would go on kids YouTube and he would just watch these videos where he would just learn things, and it freaked me out at first because he could do things that I couldn't believe. So he would memorize like all of the countries on the continent of Africa, and he knew them all. And I was like, how'd you learn that? He's like, oh well, I watched a YouTube video. And then he knew all of the organs of the human body and all the bones. And I was like, how did you learn that? He's like, well, I was watching a YouTube video. And so it kind of changed my perspective a little bit because I thought, there's a potential for good here with these things. And so as as time went on, we've allowed technology, but with restrictions. So, for example, we have a couple of iPads that the kids play on sometimes. My other kids are 6 and 4, so 9, 6, and 4. They can only use the iPads in the living room, and the iPads only work for a few hours a day.
Mhm.
So after when it gets to be 30 minutes to bedtime, they all the iPads just totally stop working, and sometimes they're very upset about that, but I don't care. That's a restriction I'm willing to live with. And I find that there are, once again, there are good things in them. So another thing said I was never going to do was let my kids play Roblox. Like, oh my gosh, the worst technology ever. And then one day I come home and God bless my wife, she had passed her phone to our 4-year-old, and our 6-year-old and the 9-year-old were playing on the iPads. I was like, what is going on? This is my worst nightmare. They're all looking at screens. And I realized they were all sitting on the couch and they were all playing Roblox together. All three of their characters were on screen and they're all talking to each other. And my kids fight constantly. And so just all three of them sitting there playing together and talking, I was like, this is amazing. This is the best interaction I've ever seen the three of them have at the same time. And so I've accepted I've made a compromise with the iPad that it's a device with potential for good, and with strict limitations, I've allowed it into our lives. And I think the zombie thing is equally deserving to me. And I think having these limitations has prevented that because they don't have constant access and they can't take it outside of the living room. I'd say my biggest concern with technology would be unrestricted, unsupervised access, because I know that when I was a kid, because the internet was new and my parents worked full-time hours and all that stuff, it was like I had unsupervised internet access and that was a disaster.
Mhm.
And so I think being able to talk about these things, keeping them in a limited capacity has generally been good and useful in some circumstances. Now, I'm never going to take an iPad to a restaurant or anything like that. God, no. Like, absolutely not.
God.
And if they cause trouble at a restaurant, big deal. Like, I'm paying to be there. They can suck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've written about the whole pop culture thing because like I was raised on pop culture, namely, I mean, through TV. Internet came much later, thank God. And like watching SpongeBob on repeat definitely destroyed my psyche and maybe my soul a little bit, but I wouldn't have it otherwise. Like I'm happy because like okay, by the grace of God, I discovered that there's like okay, there is a greater truth and that like anyway. Um I have the tools to understand what pop culture TV has done to my mind and like I can sift through it. Um but I just, I don't know, like I do fear, as much as I think it's great to protect children from having their minds destroyed, I think if you are good at like teaching them to sift through, and especially like when they're at an appropriate age, the different elements of popular culture, I just think you miss out on a lot if you don't. If you aren't exposed, like when I make SpongeBob references and people are like, oh, my parents didn't let me watch TV when I was younger. It's like you missed out on, I don't know, like a whole part of this generation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes the same for video games. Like, I mean, I have more nuanced takes on those, but like, I mean, Ellie's wants to play Mario Kart with her dad, and I don't like that's actually fun. Like, I don't know. I just like thinking of my childhood with like Pokemon. I know some people
Mm.
think that Pokemon's demonic, but like, or like Nintendo or whatever, but like they were just like really, I mean, I just have such fond memories of playing Nintendo games with my cousin
Yeah. But
that just were, it was just legitimately fun, and it wasn't for it was like for the purpose of leisure
But that's, I
Um,
mean, but I like how you guys, when you watch something, you are intentional. You're like, right now, we're going
yeah.
to watch this, and then maybe we'll talk about it. It's different from mindlessly, like, oh, I'm bored, I'm going to watch TV, or
Yeah.
worse, I'm going to doom scroll. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I have fear of iPads and phones. That, like, scrolling is different from I'm going to sit in front of a TV where there isn't this interaction.
Oh,
And,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Oh, plug for parents out there. We were gifted from Ellie's godfather, A24, which is a great studio. They
Mhm.
have a book called Watch This. It's their official like guide to film for kids. And it has by age ranges like different movies they recommend for kids. And they're like, yeah, for the purpose of being like provoked or wonder or yeah, just broadening horizons,
Yeah.
just
And
like
that's
joy.
That's
Um,
why discussing whatever you're watching or engaging with kids is so crucial. Because like if you're just mindlessly watching, then like who knows what effect it's gonna have. Whereas if you talk it, it's like, okay, like I can recognize some things are not so great and I don't want to emulate it. But anyway, okay. So here's a simple one. How strict are you about bedtime with young kids? What does your normal bedtime routine look like?
oh my, this is probably the most controversial
Kind
question
of
we'll
the
get.
Mm,
easiest one.
yes.
Um,
So based on what I've already said, you can probably tell I'm not a especially strict parent in general, but bedtime I am strict about for a couple reasons. So children depend on their parents for a sense that they can trust the reality that they see with their eyes and that the world makes sense. And the way that you show that to them is by setting boundaries and enforcing rules. And even when they push your boundaries and try to break the rules, a lot of times it's just kind of a test to see that the world around them makes sense. You know, is this real or is this the real life or is it just fantasy? And so when it comes to bedtime, um, I put them to bed at the same time every night because I know it's good for them, but also because it's good for us. So for us, for my wife and I, if the kids go to bed on time, that means we get 1.5 to 2 hours to spend time together, to sit quietly, to have a little peace. And if the kids don't go to bed on time, that means we don't get that time. And I need that time. I need a little peace and quiet here and there. And sometimes I got to watch the new season of White Lotus, and so
Yes, you
I
do.
had, and so like bedtime, I'm very strict about like no compromise. Like everything stops working at 8 o'clock. All the all the screens stop working. We start to turn lights off, and everybody has quiet time, and they're all in their beds with their doors shut at 8:30. And that's just how we've done it for a while, and I found that it works out really well. Now I say that there was a period of like a year where my our middle child, she just would not go to bed. And every night, gosh, it was horrible. Every night she would lay in bed and she would scream and cry. It's dark, I'm scared, I need somebody, I need you to sing to me. And I would stand there and I would sing It's You I Like from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I would sing that over and over again for like 45 minutes straight until she'd finally go to sleep. That was like an unbearable time. Like this is the kind of stuff you do when you're a parent. It's like spending a year singing for 45 minutes every night because your kid just will not go to sleep. And finally, eventually, she started going to bed. I don't know. I really don't remember the exact moment it changed. But so, yeah, strict about bedtime, but you got to do what you got to do. And if the person writing this question is feeling bad because their kid won't let them go to bed, like, just hang in there. You'll be all right.
yeah, my kids are very little. We also like because of I think work schedules also depend a lot. I mean, my kids really need their time with us before they go to bed, and we've tried to put them to bed earlier, but because both of us work and have pretty intense jobs, sometimes by the time we pick them up, they just need like the 2 to 3 hours of quality time. So Jojo is he's on a good clock. He goes to bed at 8, which is amazing. He hasn't hit the age of sentiency, which I would say is 2. 2 is when they really find out they have willpower. Um, Ellie is, guys, this is embarrassing for me to say. Like, truly, she's like a 9 p.m. kind of gal. That is so
Hmm.
late. It is not what we want. This is ridiculous. We say this every single night when she goes to bed at 9. It's way too late. We only get like an hour together before we both start falling asleep standing up. Um, But as of right now, that's like what we figured out because I just like I haven't been able to pick her up at a reasonable time where she can get that energy out and feel like she has time with us. Um, yeah, but we definitely do have a routine. Like, and I think good bedtime routines are more so for the parents than the kids. So again,
That's
to this
fair.
person writing this question, like if you need to prioritize yourself, like there's nothing bad that can happen from putting your kid to sleep. It's just
Mm.
everybody needs to go to sleep. But also if your kids like don't go to bed at seven, like I know some parents who are like, my kids go to bed at 7:30 every night. And I'm like, that will never be my children. They just,
It's insane.
but if
Okay.
you're out there still awake at 9, I'm also awake.
Yeah. My son, from the time he was one, so he's a rule follower. He loves following rules. He loves doing things the same every way, and he would just be like, "I'm going to bed," and he still does. So at the girls go to bed at 8:30, but at 8 o'clock he'll go, "I'm tired and I'm going to bed," and he'll go. And then he wakes up at 5 o'clock every morning and like plays by himself. It's the funniest thing ever. But the girls are not like that at all. They've never been like that. Every night it's like, I'm not tired. Oh, I'm so bored. I hate going to bed. I hate my room. I hate my bed. My pillow's uncomfortable. I need this. I need that. I'm thirsty. I gotta go to the bathroom again. And it's like, yes. So so yes, bedtime is quite an adventure, and every kid has a different temperament. But if you can get them to stick to a routine, and they will, if you try it enough times, and if you are consistent about it for enough time, they will stick to it, and it's worth doing.
Hmm. So this one from Olivia, she asks, I'm feeling too career focused in my Catholic mom circles and too Catholic family oriented for my girl boss circles. That's a tricky one. How do I own being a Catholic woman called to the vocation of motherhood and work? How can the two actually work in harmony and add value to each other? This is a very Amelia question. So
Wow.
go for it.
One girl, I'm so sorry. You gotta call the devil out of your life first thing. Um, yeah, I think to affirm Olivia, I think what you're trying to say, I don't want to speak for you, but the fact that you have like, yeah, you're just following your personal vocation. And I think like, again, to put this out there for all parents, it is so countercultural, even in Catholic circles, to follow your personal vocation. That is literally the exact opposite of what the devil wants, because lo and behold, your personal vocation is just the will of God. And so to like listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit every single day is like the worst possible thing ever for the devil and for evil. So, yeah, it just sounds like you're following your personal vocation, which, like, I think there's crosses to that. Like, it can be very lonely to have a clear vision of how you want to raise your family, how you want to live your marriage, and how you want to serve the Lord. Um, and so just to name, like, it's going to be lonely. And so I think the value that you add to just like this very like again contentious, I don't know why, area of like working moms, which is so cringe, is just like being happy and being joyful in it. Um, of course they're harmonious because if you're following God's will, which is like loving, it's very simple, like they will add value. Like it's not going to be easy, but like they will add value. Um, and how do you own that? I mean, one, just to like have time to yourself every day in your prayer to like reflect on the fruits um and the blessings of that. And then one to be like a witness. I experience many of the same feelings, especially in New York City where there's a lot of extremes. So I'm usually like too normal for a lot of things and then also too weird for a lot of things. And my kind of game plan is just to be as happy as possible when I genuinely share about my life. Um, I share the ways I've been surprised. Like I like there's elements of my being a working mom, like I have to commute every day. Sometimes my commute is like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And Steven might know this. I'll just like randomly text him and be like, I had an encounter today on the subway. Or like my coffee cart guy, John. John just has this like charism of hospitality from this like 5 foot coffee cart on 33rd and Park every single day. And like he's assigned to me. Or in my work, like um yeah, like I just get to serve people and then I come home and I get to serve my family. So my whole day is full of service. Um, yeah, so I think like it's countercultural to actually be happy and content with your life and to tell people that. And to that way, I think it's a sign for others to know like they should have the freedom to actually really enjoy what God is asking them to do. There's crosses, of course, but like the point of it all is that you get to experience the joy that God has in being a father. Joe, I know, yeah, interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so
No
I mean, not
mansplaining, please.
I will not mansplain. I will. So my wife is a CPA, so her career is one where the demand is basically that this is your life and everything else needs to be pushed to the side. And she struggles a lot with the same kind of feelings that either she's not being a good mom or she's not being good at her job. And what she has communicated to me is that, she just needs support and she needs to be made to feel like she's doing the right thing when she does what she's supposed to do. And so I would encourage you, Olivia, to maybe reach out to your husband, reach out to your family, and just let them know if you're feeling this way, don't keep it in. Uh, Chances are, your husband, if he's a good guy, which I'm sure he is, I hope he is, will give you the support you need and help you to get the things done that you need to do.
So this one's fun. So this is from our friend Sophie, who runs a very successful, very wonderful mom of Instagram page. I don't think she'll like if I call it that, called The Simple Splendor. And it does have to do a bit with social media and parent influencers. So she asks, we're in a time where, thanks to social media, the world is in our homes and families. We get parenting and psychological advice via Instagram Reels and TikToks. We strive to be the best parent we can be, but we're fed by a superficial and artificial image of what the best looks like. How can we be authentic parents in a world like ours? Spicy.
So it's not just on Instagram. I've actually encountered this kind of thing in real life too. I was talking about before the we started recording about going to this marriage retreat, and there's a lot of families there. And within about 30 seconds of meeting them, you know that they homeschool, they grow beets in their backyard, and their kids read the Bible for fun. And the the idea that your family is an accessory to your dignity as a person and that you use your family as a way to demonstrate all of your value and all your skills, I think is something that we just gotta put out of our minds because at the end of the day, our family is for love. Yeah, we're here to love our spouse and to love our children and to get each other to heaven, basically. And when it comes to presenting your family on social media, trying to live up to this image, a lot of times that's going to come at the expense of loving your family in the particular, in whatever their particular needs and strangenesses are. And I would encourage anyone who struggles with comparing their family to others that they see on the internet, besides knowing that what you see on the internet is fake, which it is, just try not to care. Try to focus on what is directly in front of you and not so much on what other people think. Because I'm sure everyone's always got some kid who's more impressive than yours or something that they do in their family that you think is more impressive than yours. But someday you're going to be old and you're going to have grown children and they're not going to remember all of the cool Instagram posts you made about the family. They're going to remember how you loved them in those moments, even if you even if your family feels like a mess.
Yeah, I would add one small thing. Something that has helped our family is this might be very cringe and very corporate, but unfortunately, I guess I am also a girl boss right now in addition to being a boss mom. But we have a family mission statement. It's very okay, okay, it's cringe, get it. But honestly, it's been so helpful. It's currently the background of my phone. Because it's just like whenever I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, like why am I doing this right now? Like, what does the Lord want me to do? Who am I called to be? Because I feel like the struggle to be authentic comes from like a loss of identity and purpose. And again, it's so hard. Again, I'm saying the word extreme again, but like everything is extreme. We've lost the nuance of the particular because of social media. Like it's just crazy to me how many people live the same lives on social media. Like you're just like, oh, this is the same version of the same thing, of the same, even the same particular nuanced area of the internet. It's like the same. Like there's a lot of like homogeneity in even in pop culture. And so I think to like, yeah, for us personally, like for me, like just knowing like, yeah, the like down to the mission particular call of what I'm supposed to do every day as like a mom and a wife, um, has just helped me, yeah, know like, oh well, this is what I've received in prayer. I mean, I'm also gonna be cringe, but like, yeah, I gotta pray. So like I don't know, I receive a lot of affirmation from Chris, but then also just like in my own prayer from the Lord because that's that's really the long game. Um, and I think once you, yeah, lose sight of like the fact that there is a particular way the Lord is working in your life. Not saying that you have lost it, Sophie. Like you're an incredible woman, and I love your Instagram, and I hope to meet you one day because we would definitely be friends.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, just to like go back to that call. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so Sophie has a second question that it's a little more intense. So let's read it. So she says, we live in a post-COVID world where many, I'd say most of us, have some form of PTSD from the world shutting down. Had my firstborn baby son during that time, and I was so frightened he'd get sick and die from this novel virus we knew nothing about. Thankfully, this dark time has come to an end, but I found in various circles in different parts of the country, parents still seem terrified of having their children get sick in any way. My friends increasingly use owlet ankle monitors to check their newborns' breathing patterns while they sleep. I have friends who try to ask me exactly what symptoms my kids have when they develop so they can trace their illnesses to determine if we were the family to get them sick. Playdates get canceled over runny noses. I've come a long way with my fear of sickness, but I still hold on to some of it. Parenting is lonely, and having sick children at home with no support from family or friends is exhausting and can cause almost anyone to break. So I get the fear, but I try to fight it. Her question is, how can we be brave in a society that is so data and health obsessed? Or is this even the problem? This is a big one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
getting stressed out by this question.
Uh,
I'll say
So
something.
go ahead.
No, I'll just say something very. Or is this even the problem? I don't think it's the health and the data obsession. I think it's an inconvenience obsession. Like, I think people don't want to commit to being together because it's messy and uncomfortable. And you might get, and like, one of those consequences of being really present in community is getting sick. Like, I don't necessarily think it's a data obsession versus, I guess the rationalism there, like the owlet ankle monitor. Yeah. Um, Probably, but I think yeah, my like hot take is it's more of like I don't want to be inconvenienced because I have this idealism about parenting that is just not real. Like it's either you hold on to your idealism and you're alone and you never get sick, or like you realize that life is inconvenient and that's just like a part of it, and so things will radically happen. Like my kid literally has hand, foot, mouth right now because I work and he goes to a daycare. And some people might say, well, like, yeah, like, he gets sick all the time, then just don't work. And I'm like, well, that's just not what God is calling me to right now. So it's just an inconvenience that I have to accept, but it's not like a moral issue. And I sometimes I'm like, why are some of these things like have become moral issues when they're not, if that makes sense. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Mhm.
Those are all my hot takes.
Um, I think the fear of sickness is something that only gets better with exposure and with experience and with connection to other families and especially other moms. I have the good fortune of having a mom who had six children, and so she's not concerned about any illness that her grandkids have. And so anytime, I mean, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I've made my fair share of completely pointless calls to the nurse and to the emergency room because I was terrified because my kid was hiccuping a little too hard or something like that. And we all do it. It's totally normal. And the thing that has helped the most is having other people to ask. I'm friends with a guy who has eight children, and he has kids my age and kids who are older and younger. And so I'll ask him, a couple weeks ago, one of my kids was throwing up for a few days, and I said, "How long does stomach?" I texted him, "How long do stomach bugs usually last for your kids?" He says, "Oh, usually 24 hours, but there have been a few times where it dragged on for a week." And so we talked a little bit, and I was like, "Okay, it's not quite as scary as I thought." And so I would encourage people who struggle with that, and it can be hard when you have your kids and you don't have a lot of friends who have kids, or when your friends who have kids are weirdos who put ankle monitors on their kids. Sorry, that was a little judgy. But you have to associate with people who can help you and find ways to do that. And chances are, if you're Catholic, you probably know lots of people who have had kids and who have had possibly lots of kids and have lots of experience to share on these kinds of topics. So definitely, uh, reach out, ask for help, and don't be afraid. I had this really I had this experience a few months ago at this church event. I was talking to people. I drank a couple beers and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I said, being a parent is so lonely because nobody my age is a parent. All my friends who are my age, they're all still single. They're all still trying to figure it out. And, we had our first kid when I was 23, and it was just like, waiting and waiting and waiting for anyone to talk about the stuff with. And everyone was like, why don't you, I can help. I'll help you babysit your kid. I can talk to you about this stuff. I'm a doctor. I know how this stuff works. You can talk to me. And I felt in that moment like, why haven't I been asking more help? Why haven't I been talking to more people? Well, because I was doing the millennial thing and being all socially anxious and not talking to anybody. So take your fear to your friends, to your family,
Mhm.
and let them help you bear it.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
very useful answer. Um,
Practical example, Ellie had to be hospitalized because she is like, this was in September, because she has very sensitive airways and she just had a really bad
mm,
cold that like would not go away. And this family that we know because we go to daycare with them, like literally when they found out, I also asked them, mom's pediatrician. So yeah, friends, group texts are just amazing. But she was like, hey, like you probably can't bring Jojo because he was still like pretty young. She was like, we'll bring him to tennis practice and swim practice with us for the whole day. And so, and this is New York City, so like we don't have cars. They were pushing like three strollers together all around the city. One of them was like Jojo, so we could be with Ellie in the hospital. And it was just this moment of like, I don't even know you like super, super well, but like, yeah, like if I trust, like if you're offering help, like I trust in that ask and that offer for help. Um, Especially around like sickness. It's just like it's the one thing, thankfully, that every parent or every person experiences. So I think to count on the commonality of that cross, generally people are the most empathetic towards it because thankfully everybody knows what it's like to get sick. Maybe not everybody knows like what's like to change a diaper or like what it's like to breastfeed, but everybody knows what it's like to get sick. Yeah.
so this one, changing it up a little bit. So I mean, this is like a debate, theological debate about the so-called superiority of consecrated celibate vocations, because I mean that is the state we're going to be in when we're in heaven, inshallah, we get there. But I mean, the real, I don't know, I think the better answer is that consecrated and married vocations are complementary, that they are both the support and a sign to each other, an encouragement to each other. So, how do consecrated slash celibate people help you to live your vocation, if they do at all? Maybe they don't.
Very quickly for me, I am very blessed to be around multiple. I would say like I don't see people who are in like active religious life as often, but there are a couple lay celebs who are celibate out there in our friend groups, and I mean to me it's just like their joy in my own vocation is just like the biggest gift I can receive because they, yeah, at the heart of it also understand the call to like fatherhood and motherhood. Um and I don't know if this is too utilitarian, but they're like freedom to be able to be present in a way that's like from a totally different perspective, but is still from the same origin, like the origin of like self-gift, but like the direction and the end of it is different, like just brings a lot of like joy in my life. It's like, oh yeah, like I am also called in an origin sense, like to give of myself. But yeah, I actually like am less attached to like your kid's temperament. So like I'll be much more open to tell you like what I think or what's going on or how I see you or what I'm experiencing. Um, and it just like completes my vision of my own vocation. So I would say that.
I'm slightly merging celibate with single people who are Orthodox Catholic. But our favorite babysitter is our friend Solomon, who's this very fun guy, and the kids absolutely love him. And he's a great Catholic guy. He's very funny. He's very flamboyant and hilarious and over the top, and the kids just absolutely love him. He's a great babysitter. Our priest, great guy. The kids love him. Um, the we've had a few full-time religious come from our parishes, and they pray for us, and they're always there to set that example. Uh, in general, they just kind of are this light of positivity, and it helps that I don't feel I've never felt judged by single people who are Catholic for being married and having children, and they've always been very kind and very supportive. So that's yeah, that's how it is.
Okay, so just to wrap things up, I'm going to merge two questions. One, I mean, I guess kind of getting at certain fears, certain anxieties that may come with being a parent in a society where we might feel like we're constantly watched. So on one hand, how do you be an authentic parent when you might feel like you're being constantly watched, surveilled by the powers that be? Um, I'm going to juxtapose this with another question from Olivia, who says that she feels called to express the joy of motherhood more publicly, but don't want to overexpose her kid on social media. So how should she share that joy? So yeah, if you could just speak to that, like, I don't know, conflicting emotions of fear, but also the joy of parenthood and like wanting to share that with others.
Something I've always had to do with social media as a parent is I never talk badly about my kids or about my wife on social media. You think that'd be obvious, but the amount of times I see people, maybe they're having a bad day or whatever, but they go on social media and they're just like, oh, geez, my kids, my wife, and it's like that kind of stuff. It gives people the idea that being married and having children is awful, that it's terrible, that it's, no fun. And I don't think that's true. So I try to always think positively about the interactions that I'm having in my family, and I always try to think about, if I had to tell this story to somebody, how could I turn the situation around so that it, isn't a total failure? Because I know that for me at least, I have a lot of people who look to me as an example in these things, like people who are still single, who I went to school with, or people who are younger than me, who for whatever reason have decided that they want to look up to me. And so I feel a responsibility to set a good example, but at the same time, I don't post like lots of pictures of my kids on social media or anything like that. I post a few, but mostly I just talk about them and I tell stories and I'll take pictures of the pictures they draw and stuff like that. And I find that's a way to share the joy without, overexposing the kids in that way.
From me, I mean, one, I think intentionally, like we're all called to live in the world. And so intentionally, like being excited to share about your life, even with acquaintances that you normally would not assume like are going to go anywhere. Like I think sometimes there's a tendency to not like invest in a conversation with someone or a relationship because it's like it's very like circumstantial or like one of utility. Like I just see this person because they're at my coffee shop or my post office or like at my work or like we just see each other when we walk our dogs or something. But that's been my way of, yeah, I genuinely try to share like the crazy, funny, weird, hilarious things my kids do like in person. Um, and yeah, I post on social media. But like I don't, I'm not like a public figure or anything. So most of the people that follow me are friends from high school who I kind of have fallen out of touch with, or but we want to stay in each other's orbit or things like that. And I will share like just moments of my life. And so, I mean, I think it depends on whether you have like a public or private profile. But yeah, in general, with the whole like fear thing, I mean, I've just been so surprised in general by like starting from a place of trust versus fear. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but like even just like the way we think about like inviting, like I don't know, New York City is a very secular place. So if we have a birthday party for Ellie, like who are we going to invite? We're like, oh no, none of our Catholic friends are going to get along with any of our secular friends because they're all going to automatically be like, oh, you don't work and you have a job, and just like, no, that's not starting from a place of trust. Like these are our friends who are normal people who can have conversations with people and who just like their lives. And like if you and so yeah, I'm kind of saying the same stuff again and again, so I'm very sorry to Olivia again. But yeah, just like sharing about your life. I mean, funny story, but yesterday I ran into one of our neighbors who I haven't seen in 3 months because the weather's been bad in New York City and you don't see people in your 1,000-person apartment building if the weather's bad. And she was like, "What is your skincare routine? Like, you look great." And I basically and I basically told her my routine, but I was like, I'll be honest, like I really think my skin's great because I like my life. Not that she doesn't. Not that she doesn't. She's a lovely person. But then like the second question that followed was like a really deep one. She was like, "How do you decide the values for your family? Like it's been so overwhelming for us, like so and so starting kindergarten, and like how do you decide to discipline your kid?" And I was just like struck. I haven't not seen this woman for 3 months, okay? We've not had a conversation in 3 months. But the fact that like, I don't know, I guess I did something right where I just am excited to see her and like stop to talk to her, that she like we had a much deeper conversation about like deciding as a parent how to discipline your kid. Um, and yeah, I think it just comes from this openness to fun. And life is actually fun. And I just feel like so many, especially millennials forget that life is fun. It's an adventure, blah, blah, blah. So that's it.
Hmm. Well, Amelia and Joe, thank you for taking the time to share all your wisdom about parenthood, marriage,
Mhm.
vocation. And we'll tag your social media if people want to ask you more questions. But thank you guys. This was awesome.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you,
Thanks,
Joe.
Stephen. Thank you.